Yeah? That's it there?
So I would like to introduce David Fry. David Fry is he is the tech director at Hanover School District, and he has also created the LMS, which his district uses. I know people in Central York School District use Schoology. In Hanover, they actually use something called Firefly. So I'm going to turn it over to you, David.
All right, thank you. Good morning. As she said, my name's David Fry. I'm Director of Technology for Hanover Public School District. Everything that we do at the school district is focused around our mission statement, and it's committed to excellence. So I wanted to take a step back and talk about how I got into technology, talk a little bit about my education, and then talk about what it means to be a technology director and what are some applications that I've built and kind of how I've got into programming as a technology director. So this is a photo of the first computer that I ever owned. It was a TI-99 4A. And you can see that it actually hooked to a television, not a monitor. And it had some cartridges that you could use and you could plug in and play different games or use different applications. The really neat thing about this type of computer was that it actually had built into it a programming language called BASIC. And so here's a real simple program that's written in BASIC. Basically, it's only 3 lines long. It's this 10, 20, and 30. And it just prints all of Wikipedia 10 times. So this was really my first introduction into any sort of programming. And while the programming language was really limited, you could only do things like print text or make the screen change color or draw some real simple shapes. It was kind of the first time I dipped my feet into programming. One of the things that really wasn't that great about this is that as soon as you turned off the device, it didn't have anything to save the program, so you would have to retype it every time you turn the program on. So that wasn't the best. So as far as my education, I actually attended K-12 at Hanover Public School District. I graduated in 1998, and then I went to Pennsylvania State University for computer science. During college, I actually worked with small and medium-sized businesses to set up networks, set up hardware, set up software, pretty much whatever they needed me to do. So that gave me a lot of experience so that when I was hired by Hanover to be their director of technology, I had a lot of ideas of how I wanted to do things. So what does a director of technology do? The one really great thing about my job is I'm never doing the same thing 2 days in a row. So I'm going to talk about the different aspects in more detail in a little bit, but basically my job can be anything from helping a teacher with a specific computer problem in their classroom, helping design new curriculum and new courses that our high school might teach, setting up new wireless equipment, or programming a new way to do field trips, permission slips online. So the first aspect I wanted to talk about in my job is technology integration. And I define technology integration as any way that we can use technology to enhance a current activity that a teacher is doing in their classroom, or using technology to create something, a task that wasn't able to be done before. So it's really important to keep the technology stable and make it easy to use so that the teachers use it and can gain confidence in using it. However, things still break. And so another part of my job is technology support. I spend a portion of my time either fixing things that are broken, trying to find better ways of implementing technology, or implementing brand new technologies. And so this could be anything from trying to help fix Chromebooks that have broken screens, repairing parts of the wireless network, or implementing new recording software in our studios. Probably the most exciting part of my job is actually doing curriculum research and development. So I actually look at what kind of jobs are going to be out there when our students graduate, and how we can change what we're doing in our schools to make sure that the students have the skills to be successful when they graduate. This also includes working with administrators, teachers, to develop different courses and lessons to help them prepare the students for those tasks. The one thing that I do that's a little bit different than some other technology directors is I do a lot of software development and work on automation. So automation I would describe as a way of writing programs so that a human doesn't have to do certain jobs. So for example, and this is probably similar in your school district as well, but when a student enrolls, they automatically have their email account created, they have their lunch account created, they have an account to log into the computers created, all within a few minutes of the students enrolling. So it saves having somebody else have to actually work through each one of those processes and add a user in. I actually have a good selection of different programming languages up here that I have used either now or in the past. Some of them I'll talk about in a minute as when I get into talking a little bit about web development, but things like PowerShell and Bash and even Java and Python to a lesser extent are things that we use to work on automation. They're ways that you can have, when some event occurs, to actually trigger other events and automate creation of users or creation of files or what have you. So I did want to take a step back and talk about most of the development that I do is web development. So that means that there is a front-end language and a back-end language. And so on this slide, you can see some of the back-end languages are ones like Go, Python, Java, Cold Fusion. And then some of the front-end languages are things like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So when you pull up a web page and you type something into the form or into a field, it actually sends that information to the back end, and the back end stores that information somehow. So the way that I interface and save most of the information is in a database using a programming language called SQL. And SQL basically lets us save files or information to a database so that you can pull it back out in the future. To help keep me organized as I'm working through some of these different projects, I use a programming methodology called Agile Development. And this is very similar to other types of iterative design processes in that you want to basically start off with a small chunk of a project to work through, and you do what's called a sprint. And so you basically just try to keep your head down and work for a couple days on building some piece of a program. It's important that the program, when you're done with this, can actually work. It may not have all the features that you want to have in it, but it should at least do something. And the reason for that is I love this graphic that shows the difference between incremental and iterative design. So at the top you have incremental design or an incremental a workflow. So what that means is like when you build a car, if you just have a set of tires, you can't use that car at all. So until you get to the final step, you don't have any product that you could use. So if the project gets canceled at any time, you're left with basically nothing. In iterative design, you start off with something that accomplishes the bare minimums of what you want to accomplish with that program. So if I was making a social media platform, the bare minimum would be that I want to have friends and I want to make posts. And then you can work your way up and keep adding features. And each time between these steps, you want to be talking to the people that are going to use it, and you want to make sure that you're going in the right direction. You would hate to get to the end of the process and you would think that you built a car and the people really wanted a truck. So it makes it a lot easier to change course if you're using an iterative design because you're constantly meeting and talking to the people that are going to be using it at the end. So that brings me to the biggest project that I've worked on in the Hanover Public School District, and that's Firefly. Firefly is our student information system. It handles all the grading, report cards. It handles a learning management system for submitting assignments and answering questions. It handles attendance and pretty much anything related to student information in our district. Here's some screenshots of Firefly, just some of the different sections. Right here is part of our VIP squared process, which is a planning process that all of our students go through. And this is actually an interest survey that the students complete. The middle one, this is actually a breakdown of some of the assessment data we get back on the students, broken down by individual piece of content. We have a hybrid scheduler that the high school uses to actually schedule certain periods at different places. And that's this item right here. And this bottom one is a ticket system that we put together and built into Firefly so that if students or teachers have issues, they can actually submit work order tickets, and then the technicians and myself will know that there are issues that need to be fixed. Like most of my other development, Firefly is completely web-based. So the front end is written entirely in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So that's the pretty end that you see. The back end is written in a bunch of different languages because there are different needs for some of the different aspects. So Cold Fusion and Java are used when I just need a real easy way to save something to a database. And Go, I use the Go language whenever I need something that's really, really fast. So that's my basic presentation. I want to open it up now to any questions that you have. And just, I hope you enjoyed my sharing with this.
Okay. So we will take questions. And if you have a question, you can just unmute your mic. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So when you said that, like when you showed that visual of the wheel getting to the car and then the wheel turning into a scooter, turning into a bicycle, turning into a car.
Yep.
Is that how you made Firefly?
It's exactly how I made Firefly. I didn't start with having every feature that I wanted because I'd still be working on it. I would make a little part that would do the bare minimum of what the teachers or the administrators asked for. And then I would show it to them and I said, what do you guys think? And a lot of times they would say, well, this looks great, but we don't really do this that way. Or we really need to have this feature. And then I would go back and I would start working and adding those features. There comes a time in every project where you basically just say, this is it. This is what we have right now. I need to work on some other things. And normally we get to the point where everybody's pretty much happy with the product that's there. And then you kind of, you put things on what's called the backlog of things that you want to work through if you have the time to do it.
I really appreciate that because I know that we have a lot of kids who want to have everything just right, and even grown-ups. And it's okay not to. It's okay to move forward and learn and grow as you go.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because if you were waiting for it to be, I mean, no programming language does, or no program does everything that every one of its users wants to do. And especially when you're building an application that hundreds of people are going to use, you're going to have to make decisions that aren't going to make everyone happy. So you're going to have to make decisions of how a program should work based on what you think is the best way, or based on what the feedback you get from the most people, how they think it should be.
Thanks. Debbie, was there a question from your end?
Yes, I have a question. Did you say that through the Firefly program that you have tickets for problems that occur with the technology that you use in your school?
Yeah, yes. That's actually how we get all of our, that's kind of like our main go-to place. So whenever somebody has a problem with a computer, whether it be a broken screen or if somebody wants to order something new, they put a work order ticket in, and that's how we know that there's something wrong or something that needs to be done. And then from there, we assign it to either myself or one of the technicians, and then we complete the task.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
How many tech support people do you have in the buildings?
We have, so just to kind of give you an idea, our entire school district is just over 2,000 students. And we have 3 technicians plus myself.
Wow.
I've got one more. Of the software that you've written for your district, did you do anything like a scheduling system for facilities or different rooms? And
Well, yeah, for the high school one, we actually use our hybrid scheduler to schedule out rooms, and like in our ILC, in our library, we actually have like 3D printers and stuff, and we schedule out the work through on the 3D printers through that as well, so that the students can come. And we have a whole hierarchy system set up where if the students are missing work, they aren't allowed to do some of the more fun things. They have to complete their missing work first. But if they actually if they're completely caught up, they can sign out the collaboration rooms. They can sign out some of the studios that we have, and actually it gives them kind of an incentive to do that work.
we'd like to do something like that too.
So, Mrs. Anderson, it looks like you have somebody with a question, but then I have a follow-up question for what Mrs. Bieber just said.
Go ahead.
Is that Firefly thing that you made, do you only use it for your school district, or is it for other school districts too?
That's a great question. We actually have a couple other school districts using bits and pieces of it. So one of the administrators that used to work with our school went to another school district, and he really liked what we had here. So we actually let them use parts of the curriculum and the evaluation pieces, so that they can keep their information there. It's really neat, especially with the curriculum, because we can actually share pieces of curriculum between the 2 school districts. So that's pretty neat.
Thank you.
I think it's important to know, too, that you don't just keep it to yourself. It looks like Mrs. Anderson has another child with a question.
Yeah.
So for Firefly, is it like, is it for like high schoolers to like schedule their lessons and stuff? And do people buy like stuff off of there?
Yes, the high schoolers do, and actually some of the middle schoolers schedule some of their meetings and their lessons and some of their different their classes. We have a flex period in the middle school, and they use that to schedule their where they're going to be at. And so how it works in the both the middle school and the high school is that the teachers get first pick, and they'll go through and they'll determine if there's any students that they need to meet with, and then if the teachers, or if the teachers don't need to meet with you, then it's opened up for some other activities, and then the students schedule themselves.
And when you built it, if you want every little thing to be perfect, how would you do that if you're starting from the beginning?
Well, everything's not going to be perfect when you start from the beginning. One of the things that I found when building all of my software applications is that what I think that people want and what they actually want are 2 totally different things. So I'll start off and I'll say, I really think it'd be cool if we did, or no, actually normally it's somebody comes up to me and says, it would be really cool if we did X, Y, and Z. And I said, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll start doing that. And I'll build something real quick and I'll show it to them. And they're like, well, that's not what I meant at all. So it's one of those things where I always have to keep going back to the person and say, what is it that what does this look good? Is this what you were thinking? And that way we can build an application that's exactly what they want. And sometimes the people that ask don't entirely know what they want. So I have to kind of guess, and until I have something and put it in front of them, they don't know. They might then have an idea of, well, that's close to what I want, but I want this, and these 3 other features on it to make it work the way I want.
I think there might be, is there one more over there? Okay, great. That's fine. Go ahead.
How long did it take to do something like Firefly, to like make it?
Okay, so I started that in 2007. So that's 11 years ago. So it didn't, what was interesting was I started in 2000, and actually, no, I started it before that, now that I'm saying that. I started in 2006. We used it for the first time as doing grades and like student information and stuff in 2007 and 2008. But then what would happen is every year after that, and I would keep adding things to it. So like when it first started out, it was only like a grade book, report cards, and managing student information. And then since then, we've added all sorts of stuff like tracking student assessments, having a learning management system, having that ticket system that I showed you, having the scheduler. So it's every year we add more and more things to it. So it's been kind of a progress. It's been a work in progress for the last like probably, I don't know, 13 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a line. Is that okay? They come up.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hi.
Hello.
Where did you get the idea of it?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Where did you get the idea of it?
Well, that's not as much of an exciting thing. We had just purchased a student information system a couple years prior, and we spent a lot of money on it, and it wasn't meeting our needs, and it would have been really not fun to go back to the board and ask for more money to buy a different one. So I started looking at ways that we could do that in-house so we wouldn't have to spend all that money. And that's really where the idea of how to start Firefly came from. Every idea that's happened pretty much after that has been feedback from either students, staff, or students, teachers, or administrators. So I have to say that while I built the program, almost all of the ideas have come from somebody else, from somebody that's used it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question again.
Sure.
So, was there any problems making Firefly while you were making it, and how did you fix them?
Oh my gosh, there's tons and tons and tons of problems. One of the things about computer programming is that what a human thinks and what a computer thinks are totally different things. So you have to tell a computer exactly what it needs to do. So for example, entering in, if I just made a field that said you need to put in, the number of students that are going to be in your class, a computer needs to be told that 300,000 students is not a reasonable number to put in there. So you have to constantly check all of the information that comes into the system to make sure it's reasonable. And all sorts of problems come out from not having that information. So yeah, lots of problems.
Can you pause can you restart we got kicked off.
Okay.
That question. Do you want to ask it again, Evelyn?
Yeah. My question was, did you have any problems making Firefly, and how did you fix them?
Okay. So yes, we've had lots and lots of problems. So because basically there's a disconnect between how humans think and how computers work. And you have to make sure that all of the information that's coming into the system is reasonable. So if somebody types in, I have 300,000 students in this class, a computer's going to be like, yep, that's a number, I'm good with that. A human would be like, though, there's no way. You only have 2,000 students in the whole school district. How can it be 300,000 students in the class? So the computer has to go back. You have to tell the computer, hey, that's not a reasonable number to put in. And it just creates all sorts of other problems that you never see coming until somebody does it while the program's being used. And so, yeah, it's just been one of the big things that you have to do in developing applications after you deploy it is fix all the bugs that come up.
And I had another question. Did
Okay.
you make any websites other than Firefly?
Yes. Well, the district website we put together, that was actually something we did in the last couple years. And let's see here, what else? I mean, there's a lot. We made the digital signage that runs around the school. We made software to work on our recording studios so that you can just sign in and it automatically uploads to Google. So yeah, we've made a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Does anybody else have questions that they want to ask? I'm sorry, we're just kind of taking over.
No problem.
Anybody else that were- Yeah, they're all a part of it, so they might have questions too. Do you want to go ahead, Susie?
Is Firefly kind of like Schoology?
Yes. Firefly does almost the same things that Schoology does. It does it in its own way, but it accomplishes all the same tasks.
Thank you.
Yep.
David, we had a question. Where did the name Firefly come from? Why did you name it Firefly?
You know, I wish I had a cool story for that, but I just thought it was a neat name. So that was just something that I needed a name for it, and I went through like 100 different things, and I just started looking at lists of like different project names, and that one stuck out. The one thing that does have a cool story is that the logo was actually developed by one of our middle school students, and I just thought that was like a totally awesome logo design, and so we've been using it ever since.
That is really cool. I assumed it was by the art department. I didn't realize it was from a child in the art department.
Yep, it was. We actually had a competition to get a logo, and the high school and the middle school did it, and I thought that was the best one, so that was the one we picked.
How about we take two more, if there are two more questions? Ms. Anderson, do you have somebody?
We do, yeah. Sorry, our connection keeps going in and out.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Go ahead, Stella.
Do you have to like draw out designs on the websites, like what exactly it's gonna look like? Or does
That's a great question. I actually start a lot of my, like when I'm starting my actual any of my projects, I normally take it and do it on paper. I have a notebook it's actually this one right here. And I actually, it's got graph paper in it. And I use that to kind of draw, I don't know if you can see that, but I use that to kind of draw different interfaces and how I think it should look. The graph paper works really well because it's got the little squares and it makes it, I'm not the best drawer in the world. And it makes it real easy to kind of to sketch it out. But I start there, and then I actually code it in CSS or HTML or whatever. The nice thing about drawing it is that sometimes I can actually sit with the person that's asking for it, and I can draw out an interface real quick and say, is this kind of what you want? Is this the direction you want me to go? And it's a lot quicker than trying to program something and then show it to them.
Thank you. Mrs. Bieber?
Sorry, I had to step out for a minute, so you may have said this already, but what did you use to write it? Is it all HTML and CSS and SQL, MySQL?
Yeah, so it's actually, I had that one slide with all of the different, hang on. Do you remember that slide? With all the different programming languages. On the front end, it is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, a little bit of TypeScript. On the back end, it is Go, SQL, Cold Fusion, Java, a little bit of Python. So the one thing I found that was kind of weird, and I wouldn't have thought of when I first started programming, is that I thought I would do everything kind of in one language. But what ends up happening is that each language has its own strengths and weaknesses, and you really want to to use the language that's best for the task that you're doing, because all of them have trade-offs. And so one of the nice things about learning one programming language is that when you learn the second one, it's so much easier. And then the third one's even easier. And then it gets to the point where you can pick up any language is very, very easy to pick up. You have to have a cheat sheet of how they change the syntax of an if statement or how they do loops. But other than that, it's pretty easy to do.
David, thank you so very much.
Yeah, no problem.
This was wonderful. I'm going to stop the recording right now.